Well, I'm not sure if we're doing a countdown or not. Welcome, everyone, to the Tour of Portugal edition of Virtual Vino. If you haven't noticed already, we're having a couple of issues with this program already, but hopefully we won't have any more tonight. And anyway, if you're watching during today's show, please don't hesitate to comment, question, and send emojis our way. And of course, share if you see fit. To make sure you don't miss any news or wine tastings, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hopefully you were able to find these wines in one of the stores that had all four of the wines, as well as our bag, and in the bag should have come the tasting sheet as well. If your local wine shop does not participate in Virtual Vino, please don't hesitate to recommend them to them that they do so, and pass on our contact information. This way you will easily be able to get the four wines in our bag, the tasting sheet as well. Wines that have been featured on Virtual Vino can easily be identified by our Virtual Vino neckers. So hopefully you see them in some of the stores as well. Before we get into today's guests and wines, I'd like to let everyone know which wines we will be featuring in 2 weeks. March 11th will be our Passover edition of Virtual Vino, so all four wines will be kosher for Passover. We will be sampling Backsburg Merlot, Chardonnay, Pinotage, and sparkling wine. All four wines are from South Africa, and Bryce Gillespie from Marquis Selections will be joining us to share his knowledge of the Backsburg winery and educate us on what makes a wine kosher for Passover. Both the Backsburg sparkling wine and the Chardonnay have been featured in the Washington Post. These four wines, along with the wine bag and tasting sheet, will be available at Town Center Market in Riverdale, Bella's Liquors in Annapolis, and Dugan's Discount Liquors in Baltimore. Please check out our Facebook page to find additional stores that will be carrying the wines. Virtual Vino occurs every other Thursday at 7 p.m. Typically, we will have local guests once a month, and on the other date, we will host winemakers, winery owners, and importers. This week, we have local food and wine influencer Gabby, who has the Tipsy Bite Instagram page and website. Gabby is well known for making wine more accessible and fun, which is exactly what we try to do as well. She also has great series focusing on easily accessible grocery store wines and helping you find wines that you'll actually like. One of the wines tonight, Paxis, is available at multiple giants in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and 3 of the wines can be found at the Yes Organic Market on 14th Street in Northwest DC. Felicia Chandler, one of our wine specialists at DMV, will also be joining us to share more information about today's wines. The 4 wines are the Vino Verde Rosé, Paxis Red Blend, and Patamar Red Blend. All 4 of these wines are typically sell in the stores for $10 to $15, and some of the participating stores were selling the bags of all 4 along with the tasting sheet for just $40 to $45. So there were some really great deals out there for today's wines. All right, let's get started. I'll go ahead and introduce Gabby, and she can tell us a little bit about her website and the Tipsy Bites Instagram, and we'll get going. Hey, Gabby.
Oh, how are you? Thank you for having me. Thank you for the warm.
Sorry, Gabby. We're definitely having some issues, but we'll get it figured out.
Okay. That's okay. I'm watching myself. I'm like, am I popping in and out? All right. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Felicia and Jess for having me on. This is super fun and an awesome opportunity. So yeah, a little bit about my blog, my Instagram, and my website. So I started about 2 years ago, and my Instagram handle, as you can probably guess, the Tipsy Bite, is focused around all things food and wine. I love cooking, so all of the food that you see on there are my own recipes. I know that there's a ton of bloggers, in most big cities that feature restaurant food. I don't go out a ton, so all the cooking is home cooked stuff. And a lot of it is easy recipes, minimal ingredients. I try to be healthy-ish, but I do have a love for all of the carbs. So you will see lots of pasta recipes on my website. But yeah, and my husband is in the beverage industry, so we drink lots of wine, and that's kind of how this thing got started. We were tasting lots of wine at home, and I've been learning a ton about wine in the last probably decade, and that's kind of how my account got started. I was sharing a bunch of wines on my personal page, and then I kind of thought, I should start a brand new page and make it food and wine focused. So that's what I've been doing. And yeah, I love doing food and wine pairings. Food and wine pairing is actually a science, but since everybody's taste buds are so different, it's very much your own personal palate. So, there's some rules that I try to follow when it comes to food and wine pairing, but a lot of it is really just based on your own palate. So that's kind of what I try to focus on. And yeah, as Alan was saying, I love featuring, local wines. I try to feature a lot of local wines. So from Virginia, since I do live very close to Virginia wine country, and then try to feature lots of wines that are accessible, approachable, not too expensive. Recently, I started a series called Grocery Grabs, which is I try to focus on wines that are under $20 that you can find at your local grocery store. So these are like your, bigger brands, more well-known for the most part. But in addition to that, I do try to focus on small businesses and whatnot, mostly here in Virginia, and then obviously all over the place. So I have a wide variety of wines that I like to feature. But yeah, it's a fun side project for me. It definitely gets my creative juices flowing. And fortunately, I have two very cute dogs that make cameos in my photos often. So it's pretty fitting that we're drinking the lab wines tonight, because I am a huge dog person. And it's actually pretty funny that my dog photos get way more engagement than like photos of myself or my food. I'm like, all right, are y'all here for my dogs or are you here for me? But anyway, I'm happy about it, and they're very cute and they're great models. So, but yeah, so excited to taste these wines and chat about them.
This should be a lot of fun, and you're right about the dogs. I mean, everyone loves the dogs on the label, and
oh yeah,
it's a big selling point. So, but fortunately, in the case of these wines, the wines are terrific as well. So it's not just a really cool label. Before I introduce Felicia, I wanted to welcome some people that I can see are watching. Nancy and Marty up in Rochester. God, we got people from all over. We've got a bunch of people in the Annapolis area, people in Gaithersburg, Bill and Amy in Sykesville.
Awesome.
Welcome. Carrie in Annapolis, Eastport. Eastport Liquors is a great store. I hope you all try to shop there. So anyhow, let me go ahead and we'll mention some more people that are watching tonight. And hopefully some of you ask questions and leave comments for us. We really appreciate it. We want to make this as fun as possible for everyone watching. Our second guest tonight is Felicia Chandler, and she's a wine specialist for DMV in Montgomery County, Maryland. And we actually had 3 stores participating in Montgomery County this week, which is really cool. So hopefully Felicia pops on here in a second and can tell us a little bit about herself. And then she can tell us about the first wine, which is the Lab Vino Verde. Hey, Felicia.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good Thursday night. My name is Felicia Chandler, and like Alan said, I'm a wine specialist here for DMV Distributing in Montgomery County, Maryland, specifically on like the west side. So if you're in Silver Spring, what's up? I'm sorry, the east side, actually. So yeah, tonight we're going to start off with the Casa Santos Lima Vino Verde. But before I start to talk about the wine, I just want to tell you guys a little bit about the wine producer that we have. So Casa Santos Lima was actually started in the 19th century by Joaquin Santos Lima, and it was highly regarded at its prime. But over time, you know, things just kind of fall and die out. So like some things happened, his vineyard fell down, and in 1990, two heirs, his great granddaughter and great grandson, came together and replanted the vineyard, modernized all of their production standards, and they've been creating wine on their own since 1996. So they've been pretty much producing 90% of their wine gets sent out to over 50 countries and 5 different continents. So it's safe to say that a lot of people have been tasting wines from Casa Santos Lima. So let's start off with the Vino Verde tonight. This is going to be probably the lightest of the wines that we're carrying. You see Gabby has some forward. This is probably one of my favorites. So if you just start off by looking at the wine, you're going to notice it is super clear in color. It's almost like translucent. And Vino Verdes are going to be like that. You're going to get a lot of younger grapes in these, so you're not going to have as many of those rich colors that you might get from aging or oak barrel aging that you might see in different other varietals. So the Vino Verde itself is actually a blend of different grapes. This one has 4 different grapes, which I'm not even going to attempt to butcher those names because it would be rude to the people that work hard enough to say it correctly. But when you do sip it and you smell it, you're going to get a lot of fresh citrus notes, a lot of green apple, a lot of just really crisp and exciting, almost springtime flavors. So when you drink this, I personally feel like this is literally spring in a cup. So if everybody just wants to sip, let's give her a taste.
I second that. Spring in a cup. I like that.
So when you sip it, your palate might be having a party right now. And that, my friends, is effervescence, which comes from a natural secondary fermentation in the bottle itself. So basically the wine is just so young that there's still sugar in wine, and all wines have sugar. I know that we don't want to think that there's sugar in all things that we love, but unfortunately there is a little bit of sugar in wine. So what happens is the sugar breaks down, and just like anything in a fermentation process, it creates gas. Well, that gas has nowhere to go, so what do we get? Bubbles in the wine. It's not bubbly though, so it's not a sparkling wine. It's just effervescent. They gave it its own fancy name because everything deserves a nice classification. But yeah, so this is about 11%. So it's pretty much easier daytime drinking. You could almost call it a patio pounder. You can spend a day or two in the sun on your back porch enjoying it, and you're not going to feel too gone with the wind, if you will. So yeah.
That's a really good point.
I love that.
Yeah, the lower alcohol definitely helps. I see Amy Brown mentioned green apples, and definitely a lot of green apples in this wine.
And wines from Vino Verde are known for being lower ABV as well.
Yes, absolutely right. Which I think
Which is nice.
Helps all of us. And
Yeah.
So, Gabby, what do you think about this wine in terms of what you would pair with it food wise?
So to be honest with you, I don't think so. A lot of wines benefit from having a food pairing, just because sometimes the wines are, and mainly reds, I would say, the wines are super tannic and it needs a food, like a fatty food bite to kind of chill the wine out a little bit. But this one, I don't even think it needs any kind of food. I think it's super easy sipping on its own. I mean, you can have like a light salad or I would say some kind of like fish tacos or something with this, but you can totally just sip it on its own and it would be perfect.
I think fish tacos is a great idea. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, this is a wine that can definitely stand alone, but I think you're right. Seafood would go very well with it. Lighter style seafood and fish tacos would be awesome. Folks, if you want to ask questions live on screen, that is something we're actually able to do, although we are having some technological issues tonight, so it may or may not work, but we'll put a link up in the comments section, and you can try to join us if you want to ask a question. That would be really cool. I wanted to mention, welcome Addison from Eldersburg. So we're getting some folks out there in Carroll County, which is really cool. Well, shall we go ahead and taste the Lab Vino Verde Rosé next? And
Sure.
Felicia, I guess you can tell us a little bit about that.
Boom. So one thing I missed about telling you guys about Vino Verde is this actually translates to green wine, which means a younger wine. So basically, it's not like, it's not a baby wine, but it maybe takes a year or so for this wine to actually just be made and put on the market. So rosés, as you may know, which by the way, everyone loves rosé. I don't believe anyone that says they don't like rosé, you're lying. 78 million gallons of rosé were made in 2015. So someone drank it. We all did. Everyone drinks rosé. I don't want to believe anyone doesn't. But so it just means young wine. So rosés are young wines. There's very few, I think maybe 1 or 2 vineyards that actually ages rosé, and even so, it's only 5 years or so. So rosé itself is a young wine. So it's almost like every rosé is a Vino Verde, but I didn't say that, so like don't go quoting me on that. But it's not a real fact. But if you think about it, like every rosé is a Vino Verde in a way. And so rosés are made with red wine grapes. A lot of people probably think it might be a mix of white and red. It's actually all red wine grapes. And basically what they do is they just take those stems and those the rinds and all of that from the grapes. I'm trying to think of the appropriate word, but for some reason it's escaping me. But they take all the peels away and they take all the color. And so basically, instead of getting that deep, rich, like you will with a Cabernet or you will with a Grenache, which you commonly see made in rosés, you end up getting this nice light pink because there's nothing there to keep seeping out the color and changing the pigmentation of the wine. So with rosé, you get a nice, young, crisp flavor. On this rosé, it's similar again to the Vino Verde. So you're going to have a little bit of that effervescence when you're tasting it. And just from the smell alone, you're going to get a lot of that red fruit, maybe some strawberries, raspberries, and then even some citrus notes because, again, it's not aged at all. So you're not going to have any of those. You're not going to taste any, or not, shouldn't say taste. You won't smell any bolder scents. Everything's going to be very light, very airy, and fruity. Not sweet, but fruity, like fruit-forward flavors, but not necessarily going to mean you're going to sip on candy or anything like that. So I'm going to give her a sip because honestly, this is like one of my favorites.
I'll have to second that. And when you say sipping on candy, the first thing that I get when I take a sip of this is a Jolly Rancher. I can't decide if it's the green apple or if it's the cherry. I think it's literally a mixture of both, but
the green apple, but I get you. Like right when you said that, I was like, yes.
Yep. Like, you know how there's something like when you taste something like with wine or mostly with wine, like you taste it and like totally like takes you back to an experience or like it takes you back to something so specific. And you're like, okay, that is something that I know the flavor, but like, I don't know. It's like on the tip of my tongue and it's like, oh, it's a Jolly Rancher.
It's like so specific.
Like,
you're unlocking that part of your brain, it feels like.
Yep. Like I wouldn't say it's just candy. It's straight up a green apple Jolly Rancher, like very specific. I think this wine is so delicious. Just as much of a porch pounder as the white. I think I like this one a little bit better just because it just tastes so unique. I mean, rosé tastes so different based on what grapes you use, where it's from. I mean, just like most other wines, but this one is just so unique. And I think, like a rosé from Provence, I feel like it's very like, what it's going to taste like. It's like super light. It's very acidic, but I like rosés that have a little bit more oomph to it. And I think this one definitely has that. It's just very different. And I love the taste.
That's a really good point. It definitely has, I would say, more body than you'd expect in a Vino Verde Rosé. And Vino Verde Rosé is a relatively, at least to the United States, relatively new. I think we've been carrying them for a couple of years now. There were a couple of comments I wanted to get to. Someone, I think it was Austin, was asking about if Vino Verde is a grape, and it is not. Vino Verde is a region in Portugal, in northern Portugal, and it's actually right. I don't know if it may be considered part of the Douro, but it's in far northern Portugal, right on the border of Spain and along the coast. So there are different grapes in the white Vino Verde than in the pink Vino Verde, and I won't even try to pronounce them. If Felicia wants to give it a shot, she's welcome. She's a better person than I.
I will say the rosé grapes are not as hard to pronounce. So we have Touriga Nacional, we have Touriga Franco, and Tinta Rorizo.
Tinta Roriz?
Yes, I don't want to get those all completely wrong, but Tinta Roriz.
So that's probably why this rosé has more oomph to it if Touriga Nacional is the main grape, because that grape is super big in body, big tannins, So that makes sense that this is a little bit fuller bodied than like your typical light rosé.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Touriga Nacional is actually the probably the most well-known grape from Portugal. It's the grape, the national grape of Portugal, and a lot of people don't know this, but it's now they're going to start growing it in the Bordeaux region of France, and they're making some changes in Bordeaux as a result of climate change, and so they're having to add new grapes, and it just gives you an idea. And we're talking about Portugal tonight, and all four of the wines are obviously from Portugal, and one of the reasons we wanted to highlight Portugal is because it's so underappreciated, and the wines coming out of Portugal they're absolutely unbelievable for the price. And most people don't know this. Most people aren't familiar with Portuguese wines. And so hopefully this is an opportunity to let people know how great the wines are and what incredible values they are. And Touriga Nacional, the fact that it's now going to be grown in Bordeaux is a perfect example of just the quality of the grapes. Another grape that Felicia mentioned that's in the Lab Rosé is the Tinto Roriz, which Felicia, do you want me to steal your thunder, or do you want to tell them about Tinto Roriz?
You got it.
Okay.
On a roll.
Tinto Roriz is the northern Portuguese name for Tempranillo. In the south of Portugal, they call it Aragonés. Most people are familiar with Tempranillo, but not everyone. If you drink Riojas, more than likely you're drinking Tempranillo. And so for whatever reason in Portugal, and I've always said they did this just to make wine reps like myself and Felicia miserable. They had to come up with two names for one grape. And so in the north, it's Tinto Roriz, and in the south, it's Aragonés. But what it really is Tempranillo. So we're getting a little Portuguese education today.
That's awesome.
And
visual.
Yeah, I'm sorry, folks. I'm not doing a good job keeping up with the comments. Fortunately, Jess is here to save me.
I did see one that popped up about the food pairing. Somebody said, "Oh yeah, better pairing with rosé, meat or fish." So I would say fish, but it depends on what the meat is. So with this kind of rosé, I would say probably just chicken. Anything else is going to be a little bit too heavy and too overpowering. So similar with this rosé as the white Vino Verde, you want to keep it very light. If you can add any kind of tropical notes in there, that's why I said fish tacos with like a tropical salsa or something, that would go really well. But I would stay away from anything that is a heavier meat. So no steak, probably no pork. Pork can maybe fly, but stay away from the red meats. They're just going to have too intensive flavors, and it's going to be too fatty, and it's going to completely overpower the wine. So essentially, like, the science of food and wine pairing is you're either picking a wine and a food that have very similar flavor compounds, or you're picking something that is completely opposite. And when you're picking something that's completely opposite, you have to be very specific. We have to be like very calculated with it. Like, you can't pick a rosé and a steak because it's not going to go well together. If you're picking, like, if we're talking about opposites, you would say something like a Chardonnay and maybe like super briny oysters, because a Chardonnay is going to be very rich and buttery, and the oysters are going to be briny and acidic. So those two things will go well together because they will like erase each other out. So it's more of like a palate cleanser. But if you're talking about like a big fatty steak, and we'll talk about it when we taste the reds, but if you're having a big fatty steak, you want a big tannic wine to balance each other. So to answer your question, I would definitely pick fish, but some meats would be okay with this as long as it's light, like a chicken dish.
And I think anything, salads, especially salads with a little bit of fruit in them.
Or like a fruit dressing, that would be great.
Oh, there you go. Absolutely. And so that, I mean, it's definitely, I would say, I'm glad we're drinking the labs because I really, really enjoy them. But these are definitely your summer salad, your spring salad type wines. And that's what I think they go ideally with. But everything that has been mentioned so far, I think is absolutely accurate. Oh, John appreciates us talking about Portugal.
I definitely second what you were saying, Alan, earlier, is that Portuguese wines and even wines from Spain are such great values, and they're just completely underappreciated, in my opinion. I mean, you can go probably similar to the Paxis. Like you can go to Giant or Total Wine and find a wine that's literally $15 and it is a 2013, 14 or 15. I mean, it's been aged for years and years and it's so delicious. And the price is like, I mean, you can't even compare it to a wine from California. That's probably way more expensive. So I think the value that you're getting with these kind of wines is like unparalleled.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things I think, you know, it's hard to explain to people, and because it just doesn't make sense in our heads. But the reality is, generally speaking, and there's always exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, places like Portugal, Spain, Chile, Argentina, southern Italy, southern France, you can get just such a better value from these regions, and a lot of it's because the land doesn't cost as much. It just the labor isn't very expensive, the land isn't very expensive, and they've been growing grapes since the beginning of time. And now with the new technology, they've basically taken themselves out of the dark ages with wine and really evolved. But they've got these wonderful vines, and now they're making just incredible wines with these vines. And it's interesting. You see a lot of these the younger children who are now not so young anymore that have come over to the States and gone to schools like UCal Davis and studied, and then go back to their country and really pass on what they learned in the schools here to, you know, about viticulture and such. And so now they're making just superior wines, and it's great. And Portugal is a perfect example of that. So I guess we should get into the reds now. Felicia, you want to tell us about Paxis?
Absolutely. So we are on to our second producer of the DFJ. So just to give you guys a little bit of background on this vineyard, they've been around for, I don't want to give you any misinformation. They've been around since 2008 by Jose Nevia Correa. I believe that's wrong. He was born in 1949. He would have been a lot younger if I said 1994. 1949, he was raised on one of the world's longest established vineyards in Portugal. It's called the Quinta de Porto Franco. The origins of this vineyard actually stretch back longer than the nation of Portugal itself. So basically, his family has been making wine in Portugal longer than Portugal was actually Portugal. And he bought, well, his great-grandmother bought the vineyard from a king, King Luis, or Luis, I could be saying that wrong too. But anyway, so after its creation, since 2008, it's been about, 12, 15 years, close to 15 years. And he's been able to put together 6 million bottles across 40 different brands with 110 different varietals. So, I mean, that's a boatload of wine to have in such a short period of time if you think about it. So today we're going to start tasting with his Paxis Red Blend. If you've had this before, maybe you've seen it in stores. It is pretty popular. It won the number 5 Best Buy in 2019 from Wine Enthusiast. So it was a super highly regarded wine at that time. So I would definitely say give this one a go if you haven't. When you give it a little swirl, little smell, just to see it, it's going to have I'm sorry, try to get it to my light for you. It's not as dark as you're going to see a lot of reds. It actually almost has a little bit of, I can't think of the appropriate word for it, but you can see through it somewhat. Sometimes you get a red that's so dark you couldn't even, see your hand on the other side. This one is a little bit more opaque, similar to what reminds me of almost a Pinot Noir. When you go to smell it, you get a little bit of spice notes on there on the nose. And then some deep red fruits, maybe cherries, a lot of pitted fruits, I would say as well. Maybe some cherry, maybe some plum. It's all kind of everyone's different feelings on it. But could you give it a taste and see how you guys think of the Paxis Red? That is just such an easy drinking wine. Honestly, I don't think you could put a table full of people down and one person likes one wine and another person likes another, and they both wouldn't tell you that they could enjoy this wine. I mean, it is an easy drinking red.
That's a really good point. This is what a lot of people will call a crossover wine. and it will appeal to a lot of people. And those that don't like the big tannic reds will love this. But there's enough to it that those that do enjoy the big wines will appreciate it as well, because it's a very well made wine and incredible flavor. It's a lot of people will say, because it's got that a lot of really nice red fruit, they almost think it's sweet, but it's not sweet. It's just super fruity wine. And I'm curious to know, Gabby, what food do you think would pair really well with this?
So originally, when I first saw, before I tasted it, I saw Touriga Nacional as the primary grape, which is typically so that grape makes wine, or wines that are made from that grape are typically very full in body, high alcohol, high tannin. So you're thinking like big, bold, powerful wine. But this is not that. I would say, just like Felicia, as you said, when you look at it, color of a Pinot Noir, looks, medium-ish bodied, and it tastes medium bodied as well. So I'm wondering if the two other grapes that are in this kind of calm this wine down a little bit. So when I first saw it, I thought Touriga, a big steak, anything that's fatty. And I think that you could do that. But, I think any kind of meat dish would work well here. It has some good acid to it. Like a tomato sauce-based pasta dish, even anything lighter like a chicken dish. Like this definitely does not need a big food pairing because this is a lot more subdued than I was originally thinking. But yeah, Felicia, back to your point, this is a crowd pleaser. You can take this bottle down.
And just as you said, like pairing it with fatty items, like I could even see this going well with like a really fatty salmon. Like if you sear it up really nicely, just because of the
that's a good
flavors
point.
itself. I'm just like, you know what? I just want to eat something fatty when I eat this. This
Yep.
tastes like a great pairing for it.
Yeah, or even like, I have a little cheese board here with some salami. I took a salami bite and it was great. So this doesn't even need food. Cherry cola, I love that. This totally doesn't need food, but it could benefit from food if you wanted to. But it goes great with Netflix on my couch. That is most wines. Yeah, I think this wine is delicious for the price. What is it, like under $15, right? Anything under $15, that's delicious.
Yeah, this is typically about $12, I would imagine.
That is a win.
And again, that's what you get from Portugal, which is why I'm glad we're doing all Portuguese tonight. Ed Terry had a question. He was asking about whether it's more difficult to maintain consistency with blends. I'm assuming that you're referring to from one vintage to another, Ed. And if you're not, I'm sorry if I answer the wrong question. But and I'm not speaking as an expert on this because I've never been a winemaker. But based on the little bit of knowledge I have, I would imagine it would be easier to maintain consistency with blends than a single varietal, because every year that single varietal is likely to be different. But when you're making blends, you can change the percentage on the blends to try to match the flavor that you're trying to reach. But I think, I can tell you that this is the most recent vintage of Paxis, and it is very different than the previous vintage. So that of course would argue the opposite of what I just said. But I think that's good. I think that the winemaker was trying to make the best wine with the grapes he had, and as opposed to trying to create a copy of a previous wine. And that's what a lot of wineries do. They're always trying to be the same flavor profile every single vintage. And some people like that. But I think it's a lot more interesting when you don't manipulate the grapes and you actually get to taste what that vintage tastes like. And I would say that this wine, compared to the previous vintage, this is a little bit bigger, a little bit bolder, more body. And personally, I like it better. I know the previous vintage received a higher rating from Wine Enthusiast, but in my personal opinion, this vintage is superior to the previous vintage. All right.
What's the story behind the bulldog?
There you go.
Felicia, can you answer this? I was thinking about this myself.
So the story behind the bulldog is there was a marketing rep. I believe his name was Dino. I can remember his last name at the moment. I apologize. And basically, he was outside one day in the United Kingdom. He was watching some kids play a game. The game was called Bulldog, and they were yelling out Paxis. So if you've ever played like tag and you've yelled out like, you know, something, not it, you can't tag me, some form of immunity, that's what they were saying to yell out Paxis. Well, I guess through thinking about it, he correlated Paxis with a escape from reality and the stress of your day and just kind of like freedom. And so he adopted the Bulldog as the logo, and Paxis became the name of the brand. So yeah,
and kept the Bulldog.
Yeah, so it should be synonymous with relaxing and maybe taking a nap, just like Buddy here on the bottle, because he looks like he's having a great time.
Love it.
I always enjoy that story. I think it's great.
Great summer red with grilled meats. Definitely with grilled meats. And the next one we're going to talk about, the Patamar, I think it's even better with grilled meats. So we can talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, I think this is just smooth, easy drinking. Pair it with food if you want. Don't pair it with food if you don't want. It's so delicious.
You know, and that's a really good point, because you don't have to pair this wine with food at all if you choose not to. In fact, in the warmer weather, you could even give it a little chill, and it would still be delicious. You know, you could sit out there, just like you might want to sit out there with one of the Vino Verdes in the heat. But if you prefer red wine, this is the type of red wine that would really go well with a slight chill on a hot day.
Oh,
So
yeah.
something to think about. All right, should we go ahead and taste the Patamar?
The last but not least.
As I'm opening this, one thing I forgot to mention earlier that I really appreciate about all these wines, and you find in a lot of Portuguese wines, not all, but a lot of Portuguese wines, they're twist-offs. And I love twist-offs. They're just so much easier. Not only are they easier to open, obviously, but you're not going to have to risk cork taint with a twist-off. So you're much less likely to have a wine that's less than ideal when it comes as a twist off. And I know I always try to get twist offs from my mother, because she's at that point in life where she can't work the wine key anymore, and it's just so much easier as you get older to have a twist off.
And who has time to look
It's
for it?
another great thing.
And
So
corks or twist off, like they have nothing to do with the quality of the wine. I know that's like a myth that I don't know who started back years ago, that twist offs are cheaper wines, but that is not the case at all. I mean, there are, as evidenced by this, there's wonderful wines out there that are twist offs, and it has literally nothing to do with the quality of the juice. So
Felicia, you want to tell us a little bit about the Patamar?
So the Patamar is a 90-point rated. It's a very unique wine, actually. It is a red blend from Portugal, just like all the others that we have here today. This one's actually aged in French oak barrels. So when you swirl it around, you're going to get a lot of like warm vanilla notes when you smell it. It almost smells like it has a sweetness to it right on the nose. And it's super exciting, because you hear oak and people think like, oh, this is going to taste like wood. No, it's not. It's French oak. So you're going to have some vanilla. You're going to have some, I mean, this to me kind of smells like the epitome of what Thanksgiving dinner should have gone with. So let's give it a taste and see what you guys think. It's so good. It's nice and dry, a little bit on the tongue. The tannins really pull right on your palate. It's salad. I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, my mouth is watering for this wine. Like, I've been waiting for it all night. It's delicious. You get a lot of ripe blackberry, some deep fruit, just red fruits in there. It's great. Probably, this is honestly, I want to say the Rosé was my favorite, but this one might actually be my favorite of the night.
So, Gabby, what would you pair this with?
So definitely, I would say definitely a steak. This one is way more tannic than the last one, in my opinion. So something that is fatty, something that is rich. So a steak, I would even say like a creamy meat pasta. I think that would be delicious. Back to the barbecue, like grilled meats, like barbecue ribs. Oh God, that sounds so good. But yeah, any grilled meats, barbecue meats just sound just delicious. But I think the pairing for this, it would be pretty important in my opinion to have some fat content to it, because this wine is pretty tannic. Definitely more tannic than the last one. So this would definitely
Yeah,
benefit from
you're going to get a lot more grip with this wine, and but it's not overwhelming.
No.
There's grip there, and so it, like you said, it will pair really well with steak. But there's a lot of fruit too. This is a really great wine. This is it's funny, when we first got the Patamar a while back, it did not sell well for us at the beginning, and now we can't keep it in stock. And I think it just took people a while to figure it out, to say, okay, I'm going to try that wine that I've never heard of before. And once they tried it, obviously it's been very good for us. So I mean, we're thrilled with the Patamar and to have it in our catalog. I wanted to do, and I feel terrible because I'm kind of reading this off my phone now, but I did not earlier thank the stores that participated this week, and we had a bunch, and they deserve to be thanked. So Market Tavern in Sykesville had all 4 wines in the bag, as did Bradley Food and Beverage in Bethesda, Don Tonio's in Chestertown, Fairgrounds Discount Beverages in Lutherville, Pratt Liquors in Baltimore, Prime Beer and Wine in Silver Spring, as well as Woodmore Market in Silver Spring, and of course Town Center Market in Riverdale. And you can see that picture there. So hopefully more stores will continue to participate, and you'll find these displays in the stores and be able to pick up your bag every 2 weeks or whenever you want to join us.
I have a couple of stores in Virginia that I have in mind that I can send your way.
One day. So we finally moved it. We're moving into Delaware March 1st. And after we get Delaware going, maybe we'll start thinking about Virginia or West Virginia. But it's small steps for a company our size. But you're right. I mean, there's some wonderful stores in Virginia, and we'd like to be there one day. So if anybody have any more questions about any of the wines we've tasted, I know I've completely lost track of comments and questions. I apologize.
Those barrels would make a great bourbon.
No, they would. They are right on it.
I love the big brother to Paxis comment. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, they're made from primarily the same grape. So lots of similar flavor compounds, but the Patamar, it just has a little bit more tannic structure to it. And that can be partly because it has some Syrah in it, which is also a very tannic grape. So I think that helps add that complexity to it. And that's what I think makes it taste a little bit different from the Paxis.
So Ivan mentioned that he finds that Twist-offs taste carbonated. I've never found that, but I would say that if the Twist-off had been opened and air had somehow gotten into the bottle, that could happen. But I had not run into that, although it wouldn't surprise me if someone unsealed the bottle and then resealed it, that could easily happen. And I guess, there's always a chance something happens at the winery when they're adding the tops. But I would say it in my experience, I haven't had it, but I'm sure it's possible, but it shouldn't happen often, Ivan. So hopefully you'll continue to try Twist-offs. Cindy, we will be everywhere in Delaware. So if you have any favorite store in Middletown, don't hesitate to let us know, and we'll make sure next week we visit them. John said, shout out to Paul at Woodmore Market. And I'm sure Paul appreciates that. I've known Paul for a long time. Woodmore Market was, when I first started in the business, it was one of my favorite accounts to call on. And Paul's mom was always wonderful to me. It's a great, great store in Silver Spring. All right, Monica's asking, if you were building a charcuterie board, what would you choose for these wines? So that's you, Gabby.
So if I'm talking about salami, like any kind of meat, I would pair it with the Patamar, just because usually these meats have some fat to it. And I think the Patamar would be a great pairing. If we're talking about cheeses, like a hard cheese, either of the Vino Verdes, I think would be great.
That sounds great. Thank you, Kara. We're glad you're enjoying the Patamar. All right, so we're giving last call, folks. If anybody has any more questions or comments, don't hesitate to share them with us. Again, please don't hesitate to follow Gabby on Instagram, Tipsy Bites. Am I saying Tipsy Bite, correct?
The Tipsy Bite, yep.
And you have a Facebook page? No, you don't have Facebook. You have a website.
I do have a website, thetipsybite.com, and it is linked in my Instagram profile as well.
And of course, we hope you follow DMV on Facebook, and also there's something you're supposed to do with YouTube as well. Follow us, or I don't know, subscribe. My producer is yelling at me, subscribe, Alan, subscribe. So obviously, I'm not as up to date on social media as I should be. But anyway, please don't hesitate to subscribe to our YouTube page and follow us on Facebook. And we hope that everyone enjoyed tonight. It was really, really cool having both of you on, and very informative. I learned a lot. So thank you so much for your time. And we will hopefully see both of you again here soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I learned a lot too, and had, the great opportunity to taste these lovely wines. So I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gabby. Thanks, Felicia.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
So I want to read one more comment. Cindy mentioned Cochran's Liquors in Middletown. So that's all you, Austin. I hope you saw that. Austin is going to be our sales rep in Middletown. So he'll take care of that for you, Cindy. I want to thank Felicia and Gabby again for joining us. And like I said before, I hope you guys follow Gabby on Tipsy Bite Instagram. She really knows what she's talking about when it comes to food pairings with wines. And I think she does a great job. Please join us again in 2 weeks for the South African Kosher for Passover wine tasting. We're going to list the stores, I think, that are carrying the wines. And there's only a few stores right now, but typically over the next week or two, a bunch of stores will be added. So go ahead and check out our Facebook page, and you'll see who gets added and be able to pick up the wines there. If you can't find the wines in the store near you, please Facebook message us, and we will help you find a location in your area. If you live outside the DMV, as we call it, Paul's of Chevy Chase is able to ship you the virtual Vinho wines. So you can go ahead and reach out to Paul's in DC and see if they can get you the wines. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks. And thanks again to all the stores that participated this week. We really appreciate it.